Well, I had to talk about the hikite before I could talk about the nigirigami. I feel I should also talk about the Hojo Undo as a whole. Hojo Undo, or supplementary training, are the traditional conditioning, weightlifting, and body strengthening exercises done in traditional Okinawan karate. Now, I say Okinawan karate because many forms of Japanese karate either don't know them or know of them and don't use them because they're not really Japanese. They're more Okinawan. And that's a thin line that some people don't think is a big deal. Some people think it's a very big deal. I'll probably talk about that more in the future, but I think that Hojo Undo is very important. I think it's an important part of traditional training, and I like to practice traditional martial arts. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't approve of sport martial arts. That doesn't mean I don't approve of modern martial arts. But I think that the traditional martial arts fit a certain niche that most martial sports and modern martial arts just don't fill because they're lacking that traditional element. And I'll probably talk about that more in the future. But Hojo Undo in particular, and my teacher gave me this book on Hojo Undo. If you can find it, I highly recommend it. It's by Michael Clark. And Hojo Undo as a whole, I think, is almost a fundamental of karate, whether it's Japanese or Okinawan. And that's because the act of doing Hojo Undo is meant to strengthen your karate as a whole, strengthening your body, strengthening your spirit, strengthening your karate. And I think that most people will get the strengthening of the body really easily. The strengthening of the spirit and the strengthening of the karate as a whole is something I wanted to talk about. A friend of mine looked at these jars and these traditional methods and thought that they were outdated. He thought there's really no use for them compared to modern conditioning techniques. And I will say that modern conditioning techniques definitely have made advancements over the course of the years since karate was founded. And I think that there is something to be said for modern training. And I don't think it's bad, however, I don't think it needs to be exclusive. Most Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Asian martial arts as a whole look to the past with reverence. They look at what came before them and treat it with respect. That what was done is worth repeating and worth remembering. Now, I don't think that that should be taken to the point where new things shouldn't be done, new things shouldn't be included or incorporated. I think that is taking it to the other extreme, and rightfully so. It was pointed out that Bruce Lee did not like that sort of rigid mentality of this is the way it's always been done, this is the way it always has to be done. I think, though, that in pursuit of that, the traditions need to be maintained because that is what made it karate. I think that many of these drills in Hojo Undo or conditioning methods are specifically tailored toward making better karate. They're specifically tailored, they're optimized for karate. The gripping jars, for example, are optimized for the grip to increase the power of your hikite. Now, there are other things you could do to strengthen your grip. You could get little grip enhancers and squeeze those, or you could do rope pulling. However, these are the methods that the old masters used in order to strengthen their grip. And that's not to say that they didn't have technology and that they wouldn't use technology today, but they used those methods because it helped, because it did work. And I think that it's important to not write off the modern methods, but it's also important to not write off the old methods. The old methods are what worked. The old methods are what they used, and most karateka would say that using those training methods is honoring those karateka who came before you. It's honoring those people who practiced karate with their heart and soul. They were karate practitioners. They were karateka. And I think that there is a difference between a karateka and someone who is just doing karate or engaging in karate. I think that there is a distinction, and I think that's an important distinction. And Hojo Undo definitely pushes you into that karateka area more than using modern training methods, because modern training methods are not geared towards karate. These methods were geared towards karate. And I think that strengthening the spirit, of course you have to strengthen your spirit to persevere through hard exertions, but there's also something to be said for creating that link between you and those older karateka. Many of the Hojo Undo skills themselves trace themselves back to older Chinese methods. For the Okinawans, it was worthwhile and practical and honorable to follow those Chinese methods. And in that same way, it is honorable, practical, and worthwhile to practice these older Hojo Undo methods. It's a matter of making your karate more than just a series of movements, a gi, a belt, and certain names. It's almost a culture. And I think that is really important when practicing any art. If you're going to practice boxing, I think that you should rub some brandy on a bruise. It's actually an interesting sensation, in my opinion, and it's something that the old masters suggested, that you take some brandy and rub it on a bruise, that it helps the healing process. Now, I think that Dita Jiao would be a Chinese equivalent. I would say that Dita Jiao is probably the more practical method of herbal liniment training, because it not only has the alcohol, it has the herbs for medicinal purposes in it. But the brandy is uniquely boxing. It's uniquely European. And those cultural aspects, I think, are important, if not to practice, but to remember. It's like raising a glass to those who've fallen. It's like remembering those teachers who taught you something worthwhile. Every time you practice Hojo Undo, every time you rub brandy on a bruise, you are honoring those people who came before you in the way that they used. You're creating that link between yourself and those older masters. And I think those links are important. I will get to more of the practical Hojo Undo methods in a few weeks. I don't want to do too many because I feel like, one, the people who wrote these books did so without any books to come from. They had to go to the teachers. They had to go to the original sources to learn and figure it out. And so I think that their hard work should be honored, and they're usually good reads. Also because I think that, and it's said in the book and from other teachers I've heard, it's important to find your method of using those tools. It's important if you're going to use the gripping jar, sure, you are practicing the hikite, but you could use the gripping jar as a way of also strengthening your punches instead of using some of the other tools. Or you could use it as a all-around gripping tool. You grip it with both hands. You grip it at different ends. You use it in ways that help your karate. And abstractly, you find your method of doing any art using those similar tools. I think that's really important, not only in terms of maintaining the tradition of the art as a living art, but also of making it your art, your karate, your boxing, whatever you're practicing. I think that's important. So I'll show a couple methods of Hojo Undo, probably one that I learned and then one from the book, but I think that it's up to you to practice on your own and find your method of doing it. So, until then, keep your teacups empty.